Joining us to break down all of this and to explain to us what has happened and where they are going from here is Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo. He is a lawyer, politician, public affairs analyst, columnist, and chieftain of the ADC.
Member of the National Working Committee.
Member of the National Working Committee of the ADC. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
I appreciate it, and good morning to Nigerians and from wherever part of the world you're watching.
Everyone looking at that convention that held yesterday. Forget the optics. Everyone said it was hot. They were robbed. If someone here lost her phone there yesterday, you know, forget all of the optics. At its core, some say that this convention was an exercise in futility. What do you make of that thought process, considering how loyal you are to this party?
Well, first of all, let me say that we have the bragging right to say that we conducted one of the most peaceful conventions that has ever been held in this country within the short while that we had, under intense blackmail, under intense intimidation and manipulation. The theme of the convention is very clear. So Nigeria will work for freedom, for security, and for prosperity. I don't need to tell any Nigerian now that Nigeria is not working. I just heard you talk about Plateau. You can imagine a president who went to Plateau, and rather than going to condole with the victims, he stayed at the airport and told the victims to come and condole with him. That, sorry, he is in a nation where there is no light. A president is bemoaning lack of electricity. This same president was the one who told Nigerians that if he did not provide electricity, let him be voted out. And right there, he told them, of course incompetently, that it will never happen again. I told Nigerians that Tinubu is incapable of giving security. It is not just that there is no security. He is incapable of doing it. Before he left the plateau, series of deaths immediately followed his empty declaration and empty boast, which Agbeni Rauf Aregbesola has rightly described in our convention, that renewed hope is a scam. I told Nigeria from the one that this is renewed hopelessness, so that Nigeria may work for, for security. One major important point in our theme of this convention, because without security, there is nothing you can do. We are having security challenges all over Nigeria. In Borno State, our armed forces are being killed and massacred. As I talk to you, insecurity is a daily occurrence. So you don't need last week to refer to the data of failure of this government. Without security, any other thing cannot come into shape. Let's talk about freedom. And that's where our convention comes in. We are not having crisis in ADC.
You're not.
What we have, according to MDA, not me, is legal maneuvering, institutional capture, and misuse of judicial authority to weaken our democratic space. That was why NBA won that the courts should be arbiters of justice, not instruments of political advantage. They warned that INEC should be neutral, not participant in political contests. So you are dealing with a system that is skewed against institutional capture by Tinubu and his incompetent and corrupt aides, not by my words.
So you're saying that the ADC
describe them as kakistocrats. We do not have any crisis whatsoever.
Everything is fine in the ADC.
Beautiful.
What are all these factions about? Mark Aregbesola faction, Nafi Ubala, and then Kachiku and Temito. But there's a new one now. That's the new one.
You know,
what's all these factions about if everything is fine in the ADC?
Thank you for that. If you guys in the media are not careful, one day Kela Megwa will come and declare herself the chairman, national chairman of ADC. And then the media will start calling her a factional chairman.
They are giving reasons.
Yes.
They are giving reasons.
No.
Saying
Reasons does not make you the chairman. What makes you chairman is the rules and constitution of a political party. If I'm here and I declare myself the president of Nigeria, would you be bold enough to call me factional president?
Yes.
Because, no, you will not.
If the facts do not back it.
No. What makes somebody president is the constitutional provisions of the process you must fulfill to become president. Not the reasons of incompetence and corruption that the person is doing in office. Now, let me tell you why I say there's no faction. a man resigned his post called Nafiu Bala. He was with me, not far away, sitting by my side when we unveiled the ADC and the new executive, July 2nd. By July 29, the party officially dissolved itself, as in the leadership, and ratified by the INEC the leadership of David Mark and the rest. And then this same man, after he has been used as agents of the ruling party, that is what the MBA called legal maneuvering. And then you come and say he's a faction. Let me ask you, can one person become a faction?
He has supporters. The last time we saw
Let me tell you what happened in Enugu State House of Assembly.
And I saw the lawmaker from the ADC standing next to him. I saw Leke Abejide standing next to him.
God bless you. You're talking about the expelled lawmaker. I can tell you that by virtue of our convention yesterday, these men are expelled. Impunity has become so nauseating in Nigeria that a man can boldly come out and say he's supporting the presidential candidate of another party and still boldly claim he's a member of that party. Isn't it shameful? How can he be a member of ADC and then he is supporting the presidential candidate of APC? Do you think this is PDP? No. Do you think this is LP? This is ADC. And discipline is our watchword and our foundation. You are found doing any anti-party in ADC, you are gone. And these men are gone. Frustrated political jobbers, scavengers, trying to feed on the rotten crumbs that fall from Tinubu's table.
But they're calling you the same thing. They're saying you people came in from the back door. Maybe at least is saying that you people came in from the back door, took over a structure that wasn't yours, kicked them out as though they were not there, and saying that you were illegal. And it's not now. He's not saying it now. He's been saying it since the beginning of this whole situation.
You're talking about an unfortunate presidential candidate who continually scored less than 100,000 in presidential contests, that came into a party to the time and he was given the presidential ticket to contest for the presidency of a party. So which door did he?
Okay.
Yes.
But there's also the fact that Atiku has been suspended of this ADC in his state. The troubles in the ADC are much, sir.
There is none. And you can quote me
that
on
suspension
that. Yes.
from his ward. You don't think it's
I said there is none. ADC has a constitution. We are not clowns in ADC. Please, those people are not recognized by ADC.
Okay, the ones that are suspended.
There was something I told people. When I came here, they were saying we're dead on our... I said, no. You cannot abort a child that's already born. We've arrived. But I reminded people, I said, on the day political calculation to acquire power starts in ADC, then you begin to see the elements emerge. Why do you think these people are just coming? When Kwakwanso, when Atiku Abubakar, when Peter Obi are now in one basket. These are the three persons that divided their votes that would have taken away Tinubu. Why do you think it is now that it's happening? That is legal maneuvering.
There's also the fact that your convention yesterday was headed by people who have been delisted by INEC.
No, you see, who made INEC?
By INEC.
No, you see, who made INEC a judge and a king over political parties? And now let me go into the nitty-gritty of the law. And this is the first time I'm going to break down the Court of Appeal judgment for you to see the perfidy that is in the lying Joash. And victory is assured by APC. Remember, he denied it.
He said it's not him.
That's what he would say.
He said it's not him.
Remember that the press statement that he made was first of all released by presidential aides of Tinubu. Let him go and say that for him. But let me break down the Court of Appeal judgment for you to understand what I'm talking about. The Court of Appeal, first and foremost, declined jurisdiction because they said the leave was not sought. In law, anytime a court declines jurisdiction in an issue, the court has no power to make any order or judgment that affects the interest of a party. So which order is he talking about? Which judgment? Because there is no judgment by the Court of Appeal. That's why they say return to the trial court. The Court of Appeal, he said they made preservatory orders. Sorry. I am disappointed that a professor of law and a senior advocate should be saying that preservatory orders in law are mere restatement of procedural legal principles, which even without that mention, those orders are to be obeyed. Anytime a case is in court, no party is expected to do anything that will adjust the status quo of any party. And anytime a case is in the court, you are not expected to do anything that will foist a fait accompli on the court. Anytime that a case is in court, you're expected to obey all those things. So the Court of Appeal says maintain status quo. The Court of Appeal did not say revert to the status quo. That's an admission by the Court of Appeal that nobody has done anything prior to that to affect his own status quo. Now, INEC as a party there, the Court of Appeal said, parties. Did you hear the Court of Appeal say the appellants should do this, the respondents should do this? Did you hear any order directed at INEC? So how did INEC get the order he is saying he implemented? And let me tell you now.
Yes.
Are you aware that the judgment in the trial court was in favor of David Mark? That is what the Court of Appeal said.
Okay, we'll get
Are you aware that David Mark and INEC were not parties to the trial in the trial court?
Okay.
Are you aware? Because it's an expert motion.
Ayo, so that we can have a balanced conversation on this. Ayo, please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Kayla. And Mr. Okonkwo, I like the energy with which you have been, taking this conversation on. But, there's another vexed issue. And I think this is underscored by the fact that when Kayla asked you how the ADC convention went, you took on the APC. So I'm wondering, are you part of those people who say that the APC is responsible for the intra-party discord among some political parties?
I am one of those people that say APC is absolutely responsible for the internal crises that are going on in political parties. But I want to disagree with you that when they asked me about the Congress, I started talking about APC. There's nothing to talk about APC except the flow of tears and blood in Nigeria. I remember telling her about the theme of our convention. I remember telling her that despite all the shenanigans, they couldn't give us public institution for us to carry out our convention. That is APC doing its hatchet job. For the first time in Nigerian history, despite provisions in the law, a party was denied any public institution to carry out its function. For the first time in Nigeria, even the private guardian that we hired, they say we should not use it because they have an instruction that if we do, their certificate of occupancy will be revoked. Do you know we entered that place and the AC, the fan, they were cut off. We were almost roasting. And that tells me about the resilience. That tells me about the determination of ADC members and Nigerians in general to take away this government. No matter what we are going to pass through, they took us through the heat and we were rejoicing. They took us through evil and we are receiving good because the Lord is our strength. So it is not a matter of, guesswork. No. The APC wants to make sure that Tinubu does not have any contest in 2027. And they have failed because even MBA has recognized that that is what they want to do, institutional capture. So I am one of the persons that will tell you that democracy is being weakened by the nefarious activities of APC and its aides. Like I said, I was talking about the Court of Appeal judgment. How does INEC come in to interpret a Court of Appeal judgment that is non-existent? And then, how can INEC interpret it to mean that the status quo of a party will now be adjusted before the judgment of the court? Because what was the status quo of INEC itself that is a party to the suit? The status quo is that INEC on its own voluntarily recognized the leadership of David Mark. They were there in July 29 of the NEC meeting of ADC that dissolved itself and recognized David Mark, and it was on the strength of that that they recognized us in their portal. That is the status quo of INEC. How can INEC on its own interpret the Court of Appeal judgment to mean that our leaders will no longer be recognized in its portal, which God said so? Because like I told you, The Court of Appeal declined jurisdiction. So the Court of Appeal couldn't have made any order that affects the status of any party. Which court said so, and which court gave INEC
one
the
of
right
the
to
things that
interpret
I've always found very exciting about the legal profession is that it always depends on the side of the pendulum that you are. It always depends on what angle of a conversation that you are defending. So that's the perspective that I'm taking to the comments that you're making. But back to the question that I asked, Mr. Okonkwo.
Ayo, sorry to interrupt you.
Just a second.
Right. Because I'm coming.
We'll come back to that.
Very good.
I'm more interested in the fact that, I mean, you are not a stranger in this country. You've been long enough in this country to know that every government in authority since 1999 has always been under the attack of opposition parties. Always been. In fact, I think it was the 2003 or 2007 elections. There was a rumor then that the INEC chairman, Professor Morrissey, was calculatively working against the governorship candidate of Lagos, of the PDP governorship candidate of Lagos at the time, in the person of Mr. Jimmy Agbaje. So much so that people were alluding that it was the INEC chairman that was attacking him and not the state doing anything against him. Now, that's on the one hand. On the other hand, when you say that the APC is the one responsible for the intra-party affairs or discord in political parties, I'm wondering, aren't the people in those political parties old enough to think by themselves or think for themselves? Why would you blame me if there is a discord in your home? How does that make, please help us make it make sense, Mr. Okonkwo.
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, what I'm saying is pure restatement of the position of the law. Section 82, subsection 1 and subsection 6 made it clear that once you give notice, 1 day's notice to INEC, your job is done as a political party for your congresses, convention, and primaries. And it is only invalidated if the notice is not given. Now, section 83, subsection 5, said no court shall have jurisdiction to entertain any matter that affects the internal affairs of political party. And then it said, in negation, and that is 83.6, in negation of this, if anybody goes against this, no court shall give any ex parte or interlocutory injunction regarding internal affairs. You should shift everything to final judgment. And then it's telling you that any lawyer, any court that does it, then that lawyer will be fined 10 million naira. That political party will be fined 10 million naira. So I want you to understand that the issue of internal affairs of the political party is no longer just based on decided cases. It is now codified. When a ruling party is abusing those institutions, those other arms of government, to intimidate and manipulate the opposition party, that is where they are responsible. Like I said, how can you say that a man who resigned his post voluntarily was a party to all the formation of the new executive, will now turn back and go to the court? And you're telling me the court that gave no decision, that INEC itself is now being used to destroy the party? Let me give you the timelines. The judgment of the Court of Appeal came out 12th of March 2026. The lawyers to the Nafiu Bala wrote their first letter 16th. And INEC did not look at that letter at all because they know it was useless. They wrote another letter on the 25th. And we got the intel that INEC chairman was told to resign if he does not do it. I was here in this studio to say, tell Nigerians, before INEC did it, this is what is going on. If anything happens, it is APC instructing Amopito. And you know what? Before the end of that day, Amopito did exactly what we said he was going to do. So why did he wait? INEC was a party to the suit. Why did he wait from 12th of March if that was his own interpretation of the judgment? Why did he wait 16th, then on the 25th? Why did we not alert Nigerians that look at what Amipito is planning to do? Because before then, APC has not brought its power to bear on him that he must do this or he will resign. Why did he have to wait? I told you that some of the press releases he's doing, that APC, Tinubu's aides, brought them out to the public even before INEC published it. What other evidence do you want me to give? So it's a different thing that you're having internal crisis. I'll be the first to tell you that if we're having internal crisis, we're having internal crisis. Trust me on that. But it's a different thing that a ruling government is using the apparatus of power, the monopoly of the force that it has, to intimidate and manipulate the opponent, to weaken democracy and destroy democracy before 2027. So that is why I'm telling you that it is APC that is doing it. And if they don't stop this, democracy will die in their hands. Of course, Nigerians cannot survive the second tenure of Tinubu because he's a very incompetent leader.
Now, if you say that, you know, you have proof that the INEC chairman did something that he was not supposed to do, and I mean, you are not the first person to say that. Is there any planned legal action against the INEC chairman as a result of that by the ADC?
I can tell you that INEC chairman that figuratively is wearing Tinubu's cap, I can tell you he will not come out of this. Paragraph F14, 2A of Part 1 of the 3rd schedule of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is very clear. Before a person will be a member of the commission, he has to be a person who is non-partisan and who has unquestionable integrity. So the issue here is not whether he has integrity or not. The issue is his integrity questionable? The answer is yes. Even Tinubu is questioning his integrity. Because if a professor of law who claims to be a son will be interpreting the judgment of a court that is non-existent, then he is a man that has questionable integrity. And you imagine a Joash Amupito telling you that it's a parody account. Who knew Joash Amupito before he became INEC chairman? And I've never heard of the name. So who will go and build parody accounts in his name to do what with it? One professor that is teaching in the university, what are you doing with it? And he's telling you that it was a parody account, sharing the same telephone number, sharing the same email. That man is a transparent liar. So what I'm trying to tell you is very simple. We are not having any crisis in ADC. Nafi Ubala cannot be a faction. One person cannot be a faction.
There are three factions.
The other people you name, excuse me, the other people you name, we are all there. There are some state chairmen of the party. We are all there, part of the INEC that dissolved themselves and ratified David Mark's leadership.
So your position is that what resolutions were
they say they are under Dumebi, Catch or whatever his name. Even the trial court had thrown away his case, dismissed it, ended it.
It's important to know that this case is
so what are you talking as in faction?
We're waiting for the rulings of the court on this particular matter, and it is very disappointing that every time when it comes to internal crisis of a political party, at some point we have to wait for the courts to interpret.
And it ought not to be in the court.
We have to now understand what status quo ante bellum means in this particular matter.
Status quo ante bellum is very clear.
You've given your explanation of that. But as we wrap up, the resolutions that were reached at the convention yesterday.
The resolution is that those bad eggs are expelled.
That was all the convention was about
No. We had the ratification of all our processes. You know, every decision taken by the INEC has to be ratified by the National Convention. The David Mark executive, now of which I am part of, they have now been ratified by the National Convention. Our policies and manifestos ratified by the National Convention. Our amended constitution ratified by the National Convention through popular voice vote and also through voting.
So the fact that you've been delisted by INEC doesn't make this an exercise in futility.
We have not been delisted.
Okay.
INEC corruptly and incompetently de-recognized.
So the recognition by INEC doesn't make this an exercise in futility?
No. Is INEC a court of law?
Okay.
There is no court. You know, when people say PDP, when they say Zamfara, when they say Rivers, no. There was an existing court order that says you should not do the primary. There is no existing court order that says you should not do convention and congresses.
In your choice, yesterday
and
we had
by the Electoral Act 2006,
yes,
there cannot be, because you cannot make any interim or interlocutory injunction against the internal affairs of
yesterday on Politics Today we had Dele Momodu on the program, and he gave his choice of who he feels should be presidential candidate and vice. He said Atiku Abubakar, presidential candidate, Peter Obi, vice presidential candidate. So I give us yours.
I have very great respect for all our aspirants. If you watch their speeches yesterday, you will see that they are all working towards removing this incompetent government. And any of them will be fit enough to take away Tinubu. We are going to organize free and fair primary elections.
So you don't have a choice.
And whoever emerges, ADC as a party will support that person. So I respect Dele Mahmood's choice, just like I respect other people within the party that have their own choices. I am a member of the NWC. My job is to provide level playing field for all the aspirants to contest for their position, and whoever wins, we will support the person.
Regardless of whether Peter Obi leaves the party or not, because there are whispers out there that he might leave.
Well, if he leaves, will he now be a mobile squatter? No, anybody, any presidential aspirant in ADC, seeing what everybody is going through in ADC, that leaves ADC for another party. One, he's a mobile squatter. Then two, he is working for Tinubu. Because if all the coalition leaders are facing through all this crisis, even with the unity, then what do you think one person can do going out? Anybody that goes out of the coalition is compromised and is working for Tinubu, whoever that person is.
Kenneth Okonkwo, lawyer and politician, public affairs analyst, columnist, and chieftain. I will keep saying that.
Chieftain I cherish it.
Of the African Democratic Congress and a member of the NWC. Thank you so much for being with us on the program, and good luck with all the work I know you have ahead of you.
Thank you.
We're going on a short break. When we come back, we're still talking politics. This time we're moving from the ADC to the People's Democratic Party. Yes? It's a lot of internal wranglings there as well, but they'll be breaking it down for us in a bit. Stay with us on Sunrise Daily. We'll be right back.